know what really makes us mad? Is wasting money on CDs with only one or two good songs.
Yeah. Tell them about punk.
What's up, posers, and welcome to Punk Lotto Pod. I'm your co-host, Justin Hensley.
I'm your other co-host, Dylan Hensley.
And this is the show where we choose one year at random and select one punk, hardcore, emo, or punk-adjacent album from that year to discuss. And today's episode is focused on an album released in the year 1991. But before we get into that, if you head to patreon.com/punklautopod, you get access to all of our weekly bonus audio. We did our 2-in-1 News of the World, I'm Listening. What were some of the topics that we hit on that episode?
Yes, we've got band breakups. We've got multiple lawsuits.
Yeah.
We've got some pretty meaty stuff in the news this past week. It was a good news week.
Yeah. It's not every day that you have stories covering the Wiggles, Cradle of Filth, and Jesus Piece. So that's an interesting little band drama stuff going on there. Yeah, it was definitely a meaty week, but also thin on other stories too. It was kind of funny. It was like, we have these big stories with fun in band dynamics, and then it's like, oh, somebody's going on tour. All right. You can also sign up at our $5 producer tier, which gets your name said on the show every single week. So we got to shout out our producers. So thank you to Steve Long, host of the podcast Rebel Nerd Radio. Thank you to Dave Brown, writer of the newsletter Oklahoma Lefty, where he actually took my idea that I pitched on air on the last episode of doing a series on album closers, the final track on an album. So I told him in the show, I was like, Dave, maybe you can have it. And then he messaged later, he's like, can I? And I was like, sure. And so he went ahead and did it. So I like the idea, and I'm waiting for my cut. Also, thank you to Jason W., writer of the newsletter Songs About Chocolate and Girls. I think I don't know how much longer we are before the next edition comes out. I think he's still waiting on the computer. Had a longer wait time than I thought. And thank you to Zach in Oregon. So if you want your name said, you can sign up at that $5 tier. And you also get access to a once-a-month exclusive bonus audio centered on an EP. And we have a winner for the August poll, and we will be talking about 4 songs by I Hate Myself. So be on the lookout for that. We'll probably do that next week. And you can sign up at our $10 tier, where you get to choose the album we devote an entire episode to. I believe we have one on the way shortly. It was reached out to by someone, and we'll I don't know what it is yet. We'll see what it is going to be. I'm wondering if we'll be punished. I don't think we will, though. So, patreon.com/punklautopod for all of that stuff. If you want a voicemail played on the show, call our voicemail line 202-688-PUNK, or send us a voice note through our email, punklautopod@gmail.com. We were going to play one, but we're kind of tight today on recording, so we'll hold off and play it next week. But I'm enjoying playing these on the show. I'm having fun listening back to them, so... All right, so like I said at the top, we were talking about an album released in the year 1991, and it was my turn to choose. But before we get into that, what is going on in the world of punk or punk adjacency in 1991?
1991 is a pretty heavily punk-adjacent year. I think there's a lot of developments in music generally that, ultimately, have their roots in punk and come from punk. Certainly one of the most... easily the most notable, probably the biggest musical development of the last 50 years, grunge, is huge in 1991. So it's the year of Nevermind by Nirvana. It's also the year of 10 by Pearl Jam, Bad Motorfinger by Soundgarden, The Temple of the Dog self-titled. We've got some Screaming Trees, Hole, Mudhoney, Tad. There's just shitloads of grunge. Obviously, grunge as a genre has existed prior to this point. It's not like it came out of the blue and this is it. But, 1991 is the year. It's Nevermind. Everybody got Nevermind at the same time. Smells Like Teen Spirit comes out, and that's it. That is guitar music now. And rock music and rock radio just goes heavy on grunge programming. And as we've talked about in the show, that spirals out into all of the, Green Day, all the the punk bands that shouldn't have had major label contracts that were getting deals in the 90s. You know, that big buy-up period of alternative music, you know, I think without grunge, you probably don't have the ska boom of the late 90s. You know, like I think that moment really was such a huge turning point for major labels in the recording industry to actually bother to look at what is happening in the underground scene and take it seriously and try and put some real money behind it. And a lot of it failed. but grunge was the one, and pop punk was the one. That was the other one. You know, those two, they really did pan out long term. Ska certainly made some money, but there was a ceiling there, I think. But
yeah, 1991 is called the year that punk broke. Yeah, we're mainly referring to Nevermind coming out, and I always thought that was kind of funny that they were like, "It's the year that punk broke." It's like Nirvana was the only one that I feel like was kind of punky, because like the other big grunge bands weren't that punky. Like Pearl Jam's not punky. Soundgarden's not punk. I mean, I know, you know, the members of Pearl Jam love punk music. Eddie Vedder loves punk music, but sonically they're just doing hard rock. It's really what's happening.
Yeah, Pearl Jam is doing a sloppy version of like Heartland rock, even.
Yeah.
You know,
and Soundgarden's borderline metal.
Yeah, Soundgarden is doing Sabbath and Zeppelin riffs.
Yeah.
You know, I think Screaming Trees are kind of in being one of the older grunge bands. I think they're certainly a little more informed by punk, I think. But also they have like kind of a psych rock revival, you know, kind of influence. So Nirvana truly is the most punk of the grunge bands, and they were the biggest one. So, you know, I guess there's that. But
yeah,
and Mudhoney's pretty noisy and punk rooted.
Yeah,
but
they didn't have that.
Big.
Yeah, they didn't have that mainstream attention. Yeah. I mean, they were critical darlings, and you know, if you were into that genre, you were very familiar with them. But yeah, you weren't getting as much Mudhoney on MTV or the radio as you were those other bands.
But while grunge is going mainstream and blowing up in the US, the UK's answer to that is shoegaze. 1991 is also like the biggest, one of the most important years for shoegaze as a genre, and it's singularly because of Loveless by My Bloody Valentine. But you've also got a Slow Dive record, Just for a Day. You've got a Swerve Driver record. You've got Chapter House. You've even got Ned's Atomic Dustbin with Godfather, which is a little more shoegaze adjacent than pure shoegaze, but it's definitely kind of coming from the same, you know, baggy, Manchester, Grebo, you know, whatever those genres are. That scene, that is where shoegaze comes from. But
I love, there's like 3 words for the same scene: baggy, Manchester, and Grebo, and it's like, I think Manchester specifically for the Manchester bands, but like other than that, they're all doing the same thing. It's very like dance beats underneath rock music. It's kind of like how you would describe that.
It's kind of funny. Like I said, it's such a big punk adjacent year. 91 is a strong year for noise rock. You've got Goat by the Jesus Lizard, the Unsane self-titled record. You've got Oxbow, Cows, Cop Shoot Cop. Like there's a lot of noise rock happening. Swans, certainly. Boo. But you know, they're there.
Yeah, Melvins are around that same time, and I guess at that time you would put them in that same scene. Though they're also weird. They kind of like straddle grunge as well.
Yeah, and I didn't even they kind of do like sludge and stoner rock too, and it's an okay year for stoner rock. I think there's a Caius record in 91 as well.
That's important. Yeah,
pretty important year for that sound. I didn't go too far out in like the metal direction, so I can't tell you exactly what else is out there.
Yeah, that early 90s noise rock boom is weird. There were so many bands playing that style of music at the time. And I know a lot of that just comes from, like, Big Black, you know, was the one that kind of, I guess Swans are in there too, as far as, like, setting off that wave of bands. But yeah, there were so many of those bands in the early 90s.
Sonic Youth.
Yeah. But at this point, they're doing something different too. Like, they're not even really trying to do that.
Yeah. And they're not doing the Big Black, like, ugly, gross noise rock.
Yeah.
They're more of your noise pop kind of experimental band. And it's But like with grunge taking over and really dominating, it really is like chapters of a book are ending and starting in 91 because the last Pixies record comes out. Well, the last true Pixies record comes out.
You don't think that the more albums released since reuniting version of Pixies is the fake Pixies still?
Yeah. Trompe Le Monde, you've got, a later Violent Femmes record that Why Do Birds Sing? I don't even know what's on that record.
I've heard that one. It's pretty good from what I remember.
You've got kind of a late Meat Puppets record. I mean, it's technically middle period. Meat Puppets never went away, but
yeah.
Pretty late in their career by this. One of the last, second to the last, and probably the last really good Firehose record, Fly in the Flannel, comes out in 91. And it really is just like we had alternative rock from 1985 to 1991. And then REM keeps going, but way less important once grunge takes over. Way less attention for their records.
Yeah. It is funny because then it's like that original wave of alternative rock grunge stops that, but then there becomes this new kind of alternative rock, which is like tonic. And,
yeah.
I'm trying to think of another...
post-grunge.
Yeah, the post-grunge version of alternative rock. Your Everclears, those kind of bands. It's like becomes a different thing. That term gets co-opted and applied to post-grunge is what it is.
Yeah, and you inevitably, ultimately you get your post-grunge, even lighter version of post-grunge, and you get the turntable scratches and minivan rock, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
But kind of along similar lines, indie rock starts to take off, and the jangle pop thing of the 80s is sort of winding down, and they kind of wind up being the same scene, even though they're from entirely different countries. But Superchunk puts out No Pocky for Kitty, and the Bats put out Fear of God, and the Wedding Present put out Sea Monsters. I'm pretty sure both of those bands toured with Superchunk or played with Superchunk around this time period, shortly after. So it's like jangle pop had been its own thing for a long time, and then indie rock comes along and kind of carries on a little facet of that, but brings in maybe some other influence. The only other... There's a couple of other, bigger waves.
Yeah, what is this? Why are there so many of these records here?
Yeah, so 1991, I vaguely was thinking, there's stuff's kind of there this time period because it's kind of all over the 90s, but I kept seeing records by bands that fit this category, and it's the rockabilly, psychobilly, garage punk, all this 90s retro rock that 1991 weirdly has a lot of, and I didn't think it was such a big year for that stuff, but Reverend Horton Heat put out Smoke 'Em If You Got 'Em, the Cramps put out Look Ma No Head, there's a Dead Moon record, there's 3 The Headcoats records, the first Rocket from the Crypt record, Pain as a Fragrance, comes out that year. You've got your Chapel Hill version of rockabilly. You've got Flat Duo Jets and Southern Culture on the Skids. There's 5, 6, 7, 8s. There's a bunch more psychobilly, Necromantics, Flesh Eaters, Demented Argo. I had to go specifically look at those genres to just get because they kept showing up, and I'm like, man, okay, I need to go dig deeper on this. And and there's tons more. These are just the ones that I know.
Yeah. It's weird. It's weird that this and noise rock have the most records out of all the genres we have here.
Right. And I was struggling to find something that fits, just punk rock or, just hardcore. And there's there's a Peg Boy record and a Leatherface record.
The Leatherface record?
The Leatherface record. The
Bush.
Peg Boy record. I mean,
yeah.
Should say that, but there's also G.G. Allen and Anti-Scene records and the Dwarves and ugh.
That scummy punk.
Yeah. The only other really big concentrated scene, though, I think, well, there's a hint of metalcore, but it's literally just Integrity and Down.
Which I did an entire episode on metalcore in 1991 on the Metalcore Chronicles, so go check that one out. I think it's
Sign up
episode
for the Patreon and go listen to those.
Because there's definitely more than this, but they're mostly like EPs and demos.
Yeah,
Integrity is the first LP, the first metalcore LP.
But the only other big thing is skate punk. So you've got skate punk, pop punk, kind of putting them under the same umbrella at this point. But so you've got NoFX, Pennywise, self-titled, Down by Law, Screeching Weasel, The Vandals, Got Our Mouth. It's not quite. It's probably the beginning. I think having a NoFX record and the first Pennywise record in the same year.
Woof.
It's pretty safe to say Epitaph is here. This
feels like the beginning,
the first big year for that. But skate punk, it's one of those things that just developed over such a long stretch of time. You can go back to the mid 80s and get skate punk records. It really, really does take over here.
All right, so it was my turn to choose the album. So I had a couple that I almost selected to talk about here. So I was finding good stuff, but I was also having a hard time finding like the one that would jump out to me. So the couple things I have written down here, I do have Soar by Sam I Am here. This is the second Sam I Am album. And I want to do another Sam I Am record because the only other episode we did on a Sam I Am album was like episode 3. Like it's if it's not 3, it's in the single digits. And we did Billy, which was their third album. And it's a fun album. It's better than Soar. Ultimately, I was like, Soar's not really the one to do. Like, I think something after Billy is probably where we need to go. There's a couple good options there as well. Clumsy, Astray, You're Freaking Me Out. Like, I feel like all those would make really good options for Sam I Am to talk about. So, yeah, Soar was not the one. Soar is not even as good as the self-titled, the first record. And it's really long. Like, the first 3 Sam I Am albums are like 40 to 50-minute albums. They're really long records. And I was just like, okay. And that Soar's got like 18 songs on it, too. It's just too long. And it's kind of forgettable. So I was just like, yeah, we'll save Sam I Am for later. I was considering this one purely out of curiosity. So I was strongly considering Misery Loves Company by The Freeze. Why? I don't know. The Freeze are a band I know nothing about. I know their name. I know this is their big record. I know they're a Boston band. I sampled a little bit of it. I skimmed. I've never heard this record either. I was just like, there's something about them. I was just like, maybe we could cover something we're totally unfamiliar with. But ultimately, I was like, is anybody going to care about an episode about the Freeze? I mean, I'd love to hear feedback. If there's like Freeze fans who listen to this, let me know. Because what am I missing with the Freeze? Am I missing anything?
Members of Dropkick Murphys, Gangrene,
very
Dogs,
Boston.
Street Dogs. Weird.
Yeah. I feel like there's something there to look at and discuss and talk about. So maybe one day, maybe I should listen to that Freeze record and be like, ooh, I'm glad I dodged that one. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, they feel important to Boston and what's to come more so. And that record's a pretty big one. Like I said, that's the record by them that people listen to. So, and the album I was actually the most close to selecting was Batch by Big Drill Car. That was the one I was like, our audience likes the Big Drill Car. We've not done an album of theirs. We have, or me specifically, I guess, has talked about them on stuff like I'm Listenings and Chart Dives, and we did talk about on the All EP that we talked about. We also discussed that like the Big Drill Car EP came out around that same time, and like Stefan and Bill had worked on it. And I think they even came up again on another Stefan and Bill produced album that we covered a few weeks ago. I'm blanking on. But yeah, it's one of those cases of we've danced around them a lot, but I've never actually pulled the trigger on them. So I think I need to like be quiet about them for a minute before I feel ready to really pick one of their records to kind of dissect. Because I don't know their story at all, All right. So it was my turn to pick the album, and I selected for this week Steady Diet of Nothing by Fugazi. Some stats on the band. They formed in 1986, and they're from Washington, D.C. This album was released July 1st, 1991 on Dischord Records, and this is the band's second full-length album. And the personnel is Ian MacKaye on guitar and vocals, Guy Picciotto on guitar and vocals, Brendan Canty on drums, and Joe Lally on bass. And the album was produced by the band and engineered by Don Zientara.
Why'd you pick this record?
Good question. I'm chasing the numbers, man.
Yeah. We're selling out with a Fugazi record.
Yeah.
Ironically.
No, part of it was me thinking we were on a pretty good run. We had a good run of numbers between our two Skagas albums and the Men at Work record. It's a little early to tell whether or not the Hot Snakes album is performing well or not. But like those records in a row like had good numbers and were some of our best first week downloads. And I was like, maybe we chase the the numbers on this one and try and like do another record that people know and might actually want to hear us talk about. Me choosing The Freeze would have killed that momentum immediately.
Completely. Throw it away.
And we have talked earlier this year. We were like, maybe we should like go for the big ones more often because people like those records and they want to hear them talked about. But
it's amazing. People want to hear you talk about things they've heard of.
Yeah. So it's just like, I don't know. And it's also been a while since we've done a Fugazi record. We've only done one other album by them. We did Red Medicine, and we did that with the band If It Kills You, where we had 4 members of that band on the call at one time.
Yeah.
I wonder how bad that is to listen to. I haven't gone back to listen to it again, but I also imagine we did spend a lot of time just talking to them and about their stuff going on too. So I was like, we're due for another Fugazi. It's been a minute since we've done one. And this one,
Fugazi, definitely one of the wells you can come back to quite a few times. Certainly one of the most important punk bands of all time, for reasons that I imagine we'll get into. So
yeah, and when we were talking about it, you told me this is your favorite Fugazi record.
Yeah, it's one of those records that I think prior to hearing this record, I was really only familiar with like 13 Songs, Repeater, and I think by this point I had heard The Argument, which would have been their last record. So I didn't know their middle period very well. Like I didn't really know it at all. Like I maybe knew some songs from it, but I didn't know the records. I didn't know what they were, what the difference between those middle period records were. And I think that Steady Diet of Nothing, I remember buying a copy of it at a record store in Asheville, and I don't think I had ever even heard that record. I just bought it because it was Fugazi, and it was like $10. And I was like, can't go wrong there. And it was at High Voltage too, which even like I think kind of tipped the scale because it was like, oh, this is a record by a band that I actually want to buy at this record store, because that was not a store that just like we just went in there, like, my wife and I, while we were dating, it was in college, and like maybe like 1 or 2 of our other friends were with us. We were just walking around downtown Asheville for whatever reason, and we walked down Lexington, and we probably didn't even go in Static Age because I was probably like, y'all don't want to go in there. I was like, I know y'all don't want to go in there, but we went in High Voltage, and like I flipped through some records, and I probably found, I don't know if it's the same time, I found Fuck Your Emotional Bullshit by Snowing at that store too, and I don't think, it might not have been at the same time as getting this Fugazi record, but it was close. It was around that time period. It's like the 2 notable things I ever bought in there.
It's funny, like High Voltage is definitely the store that I went into first when I was first going to record stores in Asheville. I guess technically I would have gone into Karma Sonic, but I don't think I bought a single thing in that store every time I ever went in there.
You bought all the Putumayo CDs.
I didn't buy them. But it was one of those stores where it's just like, wow, a record store. And you go and you're like, what is this? I don't know what this is. What? It's all world music. Like an entire store of world music? That makes no sense. So High Voltage was the one that I would go in and like actually find stuff. And this was my period where I was like getting into like classic punk bands. And like I bought my Stiff Little Fingers CD there, and I don't think I've bought much from that store because it's kind of like the normcore record store.
Yeah, it's rock records. It's mostly 70s, 80s rock records.
Yeah.
Loads of Beatles records, and, they've got, like, the dubiously licensed classic rock t-shirts. It's like, is that an official Black Sabbath shirt? Or is this just some fly-by-night t-shirt company?
Yeah. Are these boots? What is it? What is this? Yeah, and Static Age is it's the true punks. It's the metalhead record store. It's the, like... Asheville has a lot of record stores. And yeah, it's the one that does the punk shows in their store. That kind of stuff. It's the kind of stuff where if you go in, you're like, there's a lot of stuff in here I don't even know. And I love, like, this genres. So...
Yeah.
Harvest is like the actual like best record store in Asheville, and I think that's more for like it's a mix. It's a mix of like
it's the most well-rounded record store of like accessible stuff, but also like indie and punk and metal and
a
little
bit of everything. Very well stocked. It's got it's got the most records I think of anybody in Asheville,
and well curated too.
Yeah.
They don't buy everything that comes in.
Yeah. They get some cool stuff in there, but yeah.
So, like, I bought that record, and I went probably back to my dorm and listened to it that night. And Steady Diet of Nothing to me has just really stuck with me ever since then, because I think it was the record that I listened to where I decided, like, okay, I'm into Fugazi. This is a band for me. This is not just a band with some hits. It's not just a band with 2 important records. Like, I really can go deep with this band. I like what they're doing. I like the dynamic at play. And there's a fundamental distinguishing quality about Fugazi that I am a fan of. So I want to hear everything by them. There's stuff I'm, like, kind of soft on in the Fugazi discography, but overall, like the band. I like what they do. And this was that deciding factor for me. It was just like, this is more than just a band you hear waiting room in between bands at shows. Like, this is something special. So this has always been my favorite record because of that, because it was just kind of that decisive record for me in their discography. And, we can get into it a little more later, but, like, this record, I think, does everything I want Fugazi to do, and I think doesn't do anything that I don't want Fugazi to do.
For me, my experience with this album is it's one of their records that I listened to. It wasn't my favorite. My favorite is In on the Kill Taker. That's my personal favorite. It's not what I came to first. It's one of those records where I'm just like, yeah, great record. That's kind of like my takeaway from it. It is funny, I guess this might take away some of my punk cred. I respect Fugazi. They're super important. I like Fugazi a lot. They're not my favorite thing these people have done. Specifically Ian and Guy and Brendan. For some reason, I've always had just an arm's length away appreciation of Fugazi. I guess I like the early... In on the Kill Taker is my favorite record by them, but I think I like Embrace and Rites of Spring more. I, at one point, would have liked Minor Threat more, but I've just worn that discography out so much that I don't know if I would at this point. I don't know. There's something about Fugazi that maybe it's too smart for me. It's maybe the thing that always keeps them just slightly away from, like, fully loving them. I don't know. That they're a little bit more cerebral of a band, a little bit more difficult to get into. I think 13 songs might be, like, in Repeater, probably the easiest records to get into, because they're the most straight-ahead albums they did. And this is the record that really changes that momentum into becoming this, like, experimental and transcendental band. And, it's interesting. I don't know. I don't love Fugazi the same way I love the other bands.
I don't think that's too controversial of a take. I've definitely encountered a lot of people that are just like, never got into Fugazi, just never could. And, like, I get why. I think that's I think that, especially considering their entire discography
Yeah.
and where they go, I think it's fair to say a little too smart, a little too experimental. And I think even like, you know, like while I probably align with their ethics and politics and like their attitudes about like, I don't know, moshing and stuff probably more, I understand the people who push back against the like the no moshing thing and people being like, oh, Fugazi or Buzz kills, like they're no fun. Like, as someone who used to mosh, I understand what is fun about it. I don't want to do it now because it hurts and I'm soft.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I often find it happens inappropriately. I'm not going to go to a hardcore show at this point in my life and be mad that there's moshing and hardcore dancing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I think at a certain point in my life, I was mad and annoyed by that stuff. I am now old enough that I can just say, yeah, I will just go stand in the back. This is not for me. Like, I don't need to be as close as possible to see a hardcore band anymore.
Yeah.
That was a me problem.
Yeah, I think that's a case of you being like not wanting to admit, or I did it too, like not wanting to admit to yourself that you just don't like being, you just like, I don't want to be hit. Stop it. Don't push me. I just want to stand here and nod my head and tap my toe. I don't
it really does come with the territory. And like, so I get people being like, oh, you know, Fugazi, and like,
but they started that shit when they were in Minor Threat, though. Like, they really were starting that anti-moshing thing. It's like, you shouldn't be playing this music then, if you're against moshing. I mean, I get it. There was also a scene thing going on at the time with, like, actual Nazis and skinheads showing up to shows and really causing shit.
Yeah. And jocks. And
jocks,
like,
yeah.
And there is an intellectual angle to what Fugazi is trying to say with that. With all of those DDC guys trying to say with that. Because it goes through the Rites of Spring and Embrace kind of scenes, too, where they're just like, what they are talking about is not necessarily being mad that kids are trying to blow off steam. I think that what they're trying to say is that these kids blowing off steam is appealing to people outside of punk who don't get the ethics and don't get the politics, wanting to come into these spaces for the purposes of hurting people. That it is appealing to a bad audience, and those people are not being reached by the message of the music. And I think that is a very valid criticism of moshing, to say you're creating something that is beside the point of the music, that is the central focus of the music experience. That you're creating this world where people are just coming in to beat each other up, and the music is incidental to it. I think that's a fair criticism.
Yeah.
But yeah, it definitely is like, it's a hard line to walk, to be able to explain that and like can you tolerate some moshing?
Yeah.
You know, like, how do you do that? And then it gets into this whole like, I think that's where you get into like your reviver, like, take their shoes off.
Mm-hmm. Steal their shoes.
Yeah. Crowd surfing, kind of, you come up with these like tactics to discourage it.
Yeah. let's talk about the also rans. What is going on in a similar scene and sound of Fugazi's Steady Diet of Nothing?
Yeah, so the biggest thing is primarily Discord Records. You know, it's Jawbox. It's Nation of Ulysses. It's Shudder to Think. Discord also put out Skewball and Grand Union, Severin, Autoclave, Gray Matter, the Highback Chairs, Holy Rollers.
Yeah, we're about to enter that weird period of Discord where you're just like, what is the Snakes?
Yeah.
What does the Highback Chairs sound like? You know? You have an idea because it's from Discord at the same time as Fugazi. It's just then that the label will evolve into, now we're all doing Fugazi, and it's like, none of you are as good as Fugazi.
Yeah. The Discord scene, the DC scene, a lot of followers.
Yeah.
It truly is an also ran scene.
It is funny, though, you say that, but then you look at like the LPs that came out the year. It's the Jawbox, the Nation of the Ulysses, and the Shudder to Think. They are like the few who were from that same scene. They were like, let's do our thing. Like, let's be different. Like, Jawbox, I guess, is the closest to what Fugazi's doing, but they're also closer to what they're doing on like Repeater and 13 Songs than here. Yeah. And even then, they're not that close. They're a little bit more driving, a little faster paced with their stuff. And Nation of Ulysses is inventive and important for SAS coming in the next few years. And
yeah, I mean, they're doing James Brown in a punk band. You know, they're doing a soul singer bit.
And it leads to stuff like Refused and At the Drive-In and, you know, that kind of stuff too.
Yeah.
And the Shudder to Think are just the weirdos, you know?
Yeah.
They're just like, I sing operatic and really high. It's like, huh? Outside of Discord, though?
Yeah, it is a strong year for post-hardcore. That is the other kind of big scene at the time, the early 90s. I think most importantly, Drive Like Jehu's self-titled record. You know, that's your West Coast, and like that San Diego and Southern California, your Gravity Records. All of that swirling around like what Drive Like Jehu is doing. Drive Like Jehu is like the biggest one to come from that, but there's tons of other stuff in that vein at this time period. You've got a No Means No record, who are a weird band, and I don't know if I like them or not, but they put out 0 + 2 = 1. Outside of the DC area, your mid-Atlantic region has always been pretty active for post-hardcore, emo-core related stuff. So you've got a Moss Icon Silver Bearing split.
With the Silver Bearing, because when you were talking about like, oh yeah, the also rans are just Discord, and then I was like, well, what's Sarah Kirsch doing at this time? Silver Bearing. Very short-lived band. It's live, right? Is it their side is like live too? It's like weird. Because this is like there's a Fuel split in 1991. It's a split with the band Angry Sun, but then they're done. And she's doing like Pinhead Gunpowder in 91 as well. So Sawhorse comes out in 92. So that's the next thing she does. But yeah, we're between Sarah Kirsch bands. But you know, because the joke of Fuel was they were called Fugazi because they were the West Coast Fugazi at the time.
And I put Seaweed in this category. Their record Despised comes out. Probably would say that Seaweed fits more in line with like Repeater Fugazi. Seaweed never went that arty.
Yeah.
They don't have truly a scene that they properly fit into.
They get lumped in with the grunge scene because they're a Washington band.
Yeah.
And they get on Sub Pop later. So they're kind of just lumped there, but they were always like...
They don't sound like a grunge band.
No, they sound more like a punk band. Sonically, I guess they're more in common with like a Leatherface than a Nirvana at this point. All right, let's get into the story then. So, following the dissolution of Minor Threat, Ian MacKaye spent time in various short-lived bands such as Embrace, Egg Hunt, Palehead, Skewbald / Grand Union, plus more. What? Egg Hunt, or I mentioned them, but like Roslyn Rangers, there's a bunch of other stuff. And then at some point, Ian decided he just wanted to focus on playing music and not forming bands, because there's a quote that he gave that says, because sometimes bands get in the way of music because you're so focused on making a band that you forgot that it should be about music first. So I think the idea is basically, well, instead of all these like personalities, you know, conflicting and causing issues because that happened in all of his bands. Minor Threat, they famously, kind of really didn't get along by the end there. Ian's just like, all right, I'm going to focus music first. So he had gotten to know Joe Lally, who was the roadie for Beefeater at the time. And Ian learned that Joe played bass and was like, hey, you want to come jam with me? Do you have an Ian impression? It's kind of hard.
Yeah, it's that tone of voice.
Yeah.
Hey, Joe.
Hey, Joe. Hey.
Oh, cool, you play bass.
Yeah, it's hard to get an Ian. It's easier to get a Henry than it is an Ian. So they recruit Dag Nasty drummer Colin Sears to start playing drums for them, and they start jamming as a three-piece. It's very funny to me to think that Fugazi did not start with who was eventually be in the band, but it started with Colin Sears on drums and Joe, and that's it. So the initial idea of Fugazi is to mix the MC5 with reggae, which is like, what? That's a weird idea, Ian. So Colin winds up having to return to Dag Nasty. They're like, hey, this band's still doing stuff, so I gotta go play in them. And they bring in Brendan Canty. Now, Canty had made his name playing in the legendary emo-core band Rites of Spring, and as well as playing in the band Deadline, which was a DC area hardcore band that actually never had their music put out until 1989, when they put out their 82 recording. And he was also a member of One Last Wish and Happy Go Licky, which were the post Rites of Spring bands. And he was also briefly in Girls Against Boys. So during one rehearsal, Brendan brings Guy from Rites of Spring to come in and watch him play. And Guy, the whole time, was like, I hope they ask me to join. And then they left and they didn't ask him to join. And he was like, oh. He was very sad. He's like, there's not a place for me here. It's like, it's a three-piece. There's plenty of room for somebody else. But I guess Ian was not as inviting, I guess, at the time.
Well, yeah, I mean, if he's just trying to make the music work, and if the music's working,
he's not worried about members yet.
He's not looking for other.
Yeah, that makes sense with what he's trying to achieve at this point.
You're saying MC5 crossed with reggae is a weird idea. I see it. I very much appreciate that Ian Mackay thinks similarly to me in terms of I'm gonna mash these things together. Don't go together. And wanting to do that all the time. I get it. I can see his thought process.
And I did read a review that was talking about he wanted to mix reggae and hardcore punk together in a way different from the Bad Brains, because the way the Bad Brains did it, they just were and here's our reggae song.
Yeah.
Now here's our punk song. Now here, yeah, they just would do whole different songs. And Fugazi actually kind of managed to combine the sounds in a way that worked.
Yeah.
It shouldn't have worked, but it worked.
Well, that's the thing. He was take the rhythm of reggae, take the drums and bass of reggae, and play hardcore guitars on top of it, and yell over it. That's what it is.
I think whenever you say reggae, I guess people think of the upstrokes, and they don't. Right. They're not an upstroke band. There's some upstrokes, but it's not
You think of the vibe. You think of the chill vibes and the the vocals. You think of those production elements and the melodic aspects of reggae. But reggae is fundamentally a rhythm genre. It is a genre that is defined by its rhythm. It is strictly this drum and bass pattern playing style.
Yeah. So they eventually started asking Guy to come to band practice, and he started doing backing vocals akin to a hype man in hip-hop. That was kind of what they were thinking. They were just yeah, we can have a second singer, and he could just do what they do in rap, which is yeah, hey, woohoo. Yeah, I want to know what those early Fugazi practice sessions sounded like.
You tell him, Ian.
What's up? And then he is later asked to join the band following the dissolution of Happy Go Licky. So Happy Go Licky was still active at this point. So they began releasing EPs. They toured the country as well as Europe. They released a series of EPs, and Guy begins playing guitar with Ian. So they become a two-guitar band with two singers. They released their debut album, Repeater, in 1990, which was a success financially and critically. And they continued to tour, regularly selling out 1,000-cap venues. And the success of this album caused the major labels to come calling to sign Fugazi. and the band's very fierce dedication to DIY caused them to turn down any offers they received. There is a story about them being approached by like the president of Atlantic Records a couple records later, and he is like, I'll give you $10 million to sign with Atlantic. You can have your own sub-label on Atlantic. I think the idea being like Discord would become the sub-label of Atlantic. He was like, I will give you everything and anything that you want. And they were like, no. Because they were like, we don't want anybody telling us what to do with our music. Which, It's true. You sign to a major, you're going to get told what to do, despite what they tell you up front. You know?
Yeah. That's the thing. Fugazi doing what they did. First LP, you're touring and selling out 1,000-cap venues.
Right.
Insane. Today, if you're selling out 1,000-cap venues, you're on a label. You're on a big indie, possibly an imprint of a major, to be doing those kinds of numbers. 1,000-cap venue doesn't seem that big when you think about what like major label artists, and for this time period, major label artists, you know, they are like big theaters and stadium level artists, but man, you can live on 1,000-cap venues.
Because they would sell them out like every night, and then they would do multiple nights in a row in the same cities and sell those out too. So if you're doing 3 nights in one city and you sold all 3 nights out, 1,000 a night, you don't need a major. That's all your money. And they were charging $5 to get into shows. You're going to fill it out. You're going to sell out because you're selling them so cheap. And by selling that many tickets means you make money. A higher price point just prices people out of your shows.
You're selling $5,000.
Yes. $5,000 a night. Every night? That's pretty good.
Yeah.
I would.
And the thing is, Fugazi doesn't need a crew.
No.
There's no light show.
Mm-hmm.
They might have a roadie.
Yeah, it's probably to sit at the merch table. Well, I think they're selling records at shows, right?
Selling records. Hard sales?
Yeah.
No soft merch. No t-shirts. No stickers. You got somebody sitting at a table just selling records.
Yeah. So this record is recorded at Inner Ear Studios with Don Zientara. The band had asked Ted Nicely, who was their producer on Repeater, if he would come back and produce Steady Diet of Nothing. But at the time, he was like, I can't, guys. I just started a job as a chef. And so he's just like, can't do it. Probably because they record at night, and he would be like, that's when I work. So he turns them down, and reluctantly, because he actually did want to do it, but he does eventually come back for their next record to produce that one, though. And so the band's like, all right, I guess we'll produce it ourselves. We've never done that. Even though, like, Ian had produced some stuff already. And I think Minor Threat produced some stuff on their own, too. So, it's, yeah. I guess with this group of people, though, they hadn't produced their own things. And they said it was really difficult to record this record. They had just done, like, back-to-back tours. They had never produced, together. And they weren't even sure what direction they were going to go with this record. And to talk about those numbers, Steady Diet was put up for pre-order. It was hotly anticipated. They received 160,000 pre-orders before the record came out.
Number one with a bullet.
That is so many pre-orders. And how much were they charging for records? It's like between like $5 and $8, right? Depending on the market.
Yeah, they have. This would have been the time period where like Discord would probably be putting. I think my copy probably says like, "Do not pay more than $7.95." Is like printed on the record or something like that.
So let me do this math real quick, because Ian did an interview, said that they, by like the next, like 2 years later, they had sold 210,000 copies. Let's just do that times $5. They made $1 million on this record.
Over $1 million, because I'm sure they were selling them for like $7.
I said 5. That was the low end. So
$7 to $8. They're making $1.5 million on a record they recorded with Don Z. Produced themselves.
They were smart. Yeah, the guy offered them $10 million. They might have made $10 million just on Fugazi records they sold themselves over the years, like combined. So they didn't need that shit. That is so wild to me, how much money they made. So this record, there's an urban legend about the album title, The Steady Diet of Nothing. People claim it came from a Bill Hicks stand-up bit. And there's a guy who just was like, I don't think that's right. And he tried to research it and find it. And like the quote isn't even like Steady Diet of Nothing. The quote is Steady Diet of Westerns in like one of his stand-up bits that was recorded 2 years after the record came out. And like the guy actually like emailed Ian in like I guess it was like the 2000s when he wrote this piece on the album. And Ian's like, thank you for researching this. And that's how you do it. You do the minor threat voice. I'm Ian, and I talk... That's it. I found the voice.
You found it. You found it. Good. Now we got the rest of this episode locked in. We're just going to do our... I'm a person just like you.
Yeah. But yeah, he's like...
I've got better things to do than sit around and quote Bill Hicks bits.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's just like, yeah, I don't know what... That's an urban legend. It came... I don't know. People just heard the bit and assumed that we took it from him, not thinking of the timeline at all. And apparently, Joe Lowley said it. He had, like, apparently it was a thing that he said. It was a Steady Diet of Nothing. So, this record comes out, and the band claims that it had a mild response. And they think it's because it came out, like, either the same week or, like, around the same week as Nevermind. And the idea is, oh, punk is now the most mainstream thing in the world. So, now we don't need to worry about these little indie bands anymore, because they're just being super served this kind of music, even though nobody's doing what Fugazi's doing in the mainstream. But still, I guess I get it. It's like from a similar background and ethos and approach to making music. So they think that it actually kind of like underperformed thanks to that.
Well, yeah, you have such cathartic music that is now extremely accessible.
And this record kind of has a reputation of being like a forgotten Fugazi record. It's oftentimes like the lowest rated album in their catalog. I think it's because it was a transition album. Like, this is the one following Repeater. And so they went in like a very different direction with this album. And yes, the rest of the catalog, like this is creating the template for what they do going forward, like what they're going to continue to play going forward. And I think this one is just the one that people were just like, and that one's there. It's not there yet, is what happens. Because then on the Killtaker and everything after that is like much higher regarded than this album. So it's an interesting, I guess it's like kind of like a baby steps version of what we're going to get with Fugazi later. This is their first charting album. It charted in the UK at number 63. Not in the States, but... And... lyrically, it's kind of a good talking point I've seen a few times. Fugazi are known for their lyrics, but they're also write lyrics in like a poetic, artful kind of way. They're sometimes hard to understand, and the message is not the clearest, but this record it's political and a number of songs. Guy says that this record was recorded around the time of Operation Desert Storm, the first Gulf War. And apparently that weighed very heavily on everyone in the band. They lived in D.C., so I guess that makes sense. They're kind of like facing that politics nonstop. by living in those cities, and so I get it. Apparently there's some stuff addressing it on the record. Nice New Outfit is one of the more obvious songs, and it's kind of talking about just people in the military signing up for the military and wearing their nice outfits. But other themes, we have Long Division, which is about the dissolution of a friendship over time. We have Runaway Return, which is like a spin on the prodigal son story. Polish is about mass media and like television. Dear Justice Letter is about the retirement of the Supreme Justice William Brennan, who was considered one of the most liberal justices of all time. And he was on the Warren Court, which was considered the most liberal Supreme Court, which was in the 60s. And he was anti-discrimination, he was against the death penalty and segregation, and he was like a pro-abortion judge. And his retirement meant that the Reagan and Bush administration would get to put the next judge on there. And a lot of the song is about talking about how the court is being stacked with right-wing people. Yeah. This is very, very common. What's happening in 2025, and how the Supreme Court has gone so much further right. Woof! It still matters, and that was the beginning of it. Really, like that's the beginning.
That really was probably the breaking point of the Supreme Court.
Yeah. And like it was such a big deal that like Fugazi and Bikini Kill like played a protest show in DC about the Supreme Court justices. Like, just imagine that. Like, can Fugazi and Bikini Kill come back and do it again? Can we do another protest show about the Supreme Court?
That'd be the only place Fugazi could reunite.
Yeah.
Like, they would just show up and play.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, we can get into that later, but
as the tanks are rolling down the street.
Yeah, fuck. And then KYEO, which stands for Keep Your Eyes Open, I believe is about police brutality, and apparently on tour they dedicated this song to Rodney King. So, also the song Reclamation is an anti-abortion song too, so they do get in on it. Yes. Yeah, I've said my words. I said my words wrong. The Christian pro-choice song. Yeah. So yeah, there's some political stuff here. Latin Roots is apparently about a sexual encounter that then turns into him talking about his Italian roots. I don't know. E songs are a little weirder than Ian songs. So, I mean, that's the main story of this record. What did you think of it revisiting it?
I still love it, and it is still my favorite. It's been a little while since I've listened to it, but I put my copy on, and I'm fully sucked back into it. And so like I said this record does everything I want Fugazi to do, and it doesn't do what I don't want Fugazi to do. And I think, like, when I look at their discography and compare it to other records, this is that turning point in their discography where they get a little more experimental. And the experimentation is a really important part of Fugazi. But there's records like End Hits that are entirely too experimental. They're so experimental throughout that they're really probably is like the hardest record to listen. I think even like something like Red Medicines, which we talked about before on the show, is a little more hit or miss for me. They have other records that are not very experimental, that are a lot more straightforward and just consistently hard, like Repeater. And then on the Killitaker, which is the follow-up to Steady Diet, is much more of just like as focused as Fugazi ever is, hardcore records. Steady Diet, for me, gives them the space to experiment, to do the repetitive stuff, the riffs that just like build up on themselves of just like, that just go and go and go, and they keep playing it until it finally like cracks and like they break into this big explosive moment. And they do that kind of that build and break sort of structure to a lot of their songs throughout this record. I think this record sounds rough in a good way. I think that Don Z's production, as bare bones as it is, it's just engineering. It's just him setting up mics and they're really kind of producing it. Really does work. I don't think they like how this record sounds. I know they struggled in making the record. It was mixed. One of the like things that they kind of like decided on in producing the record, like the mix of the record was intended to be democratic, so no one is louder than anyone else.
Yeah, which they say is like makes the record flatter.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, there's a reason why you don't democratically mix a record.
Right. Right. The conventional wisdom to balancing a record is that you have dynamics, range between the different instruments, and people aren't, as loud as each other. But as much as it like flattens things, like it really works on this record. It wouldn't work for every record. It probably wouldn't work for every Fugazi record, but I think it really works for these songs. I think that Fugazi are probably one of the few bands where I think you can really justify doing that, because you only have 4 pieces and you have such a wide range between the different instruments to where there's just enough room for everybody to be equally loud. And I think it also works in a very live feeling way. This record does sound like a live performance. It does sound like you're in the room while they're playing. Because when you play live, typically you're just trying to make everybody as easily heard as everybody else. You're all just matching the volume of the drums for the most part. And to me, that works on this record. The bass is loud as hell.
Yeah. Which is kind of like a trademark of Fugazi, though.
Yeah, you've got Joe. The bass should be very present in the mix. You have Joe Lally.
Also, how had he never been in a... I mean, I don't know if he was in a band before. I find no credits pre-Fugazi from him. He was just Beefeater's roadie? That's all he was? He hadn't played in any bands he might have played in a band, but, they never recorded anything if they did. And he's a phenomenal bass player. He could have just been one of those dudes who just, sat in his room and learned how to play bass like a virtuoso, but then, never played with anybody. Those guys exist, But, the drumming on... so those are the 2 things that really stand out the most to me on this record, is the bass and the drums. I love listening to what Brendan Canty's drumming is doing. He loves to play the rim. He loves to be, as percussive as he can without being as straight ahead as he can. That's that very, it's that reggae drumming, like that, like that, just, not playing as hard as you can with this band.
Yeah.
It's so different, because he doesn't play like that in Righteous Spring. Righteous Spring he's playing a little bit more straight ahead, fast in that band, because that was like a wall of sound kind of band. There's some moments where they're quieter, but yeah, having them on this record, maybe that democratic mix is really kind of what makes the drums really shine. But I don't know, the drumming has always been a really strong point of Fugazi.
The bass and the drums do stand out. On all of their records, they're just one of the best rhythm sections
ever.
I mean, really, any genre of music.
What do you think? Okay, so I don't think anybody would argue that Joe and Brendan are the best rhythm section in punk history. What do you think of Ian and Guy's guitar playing? Because they don't feel like they are super technical, They're some of the best bad guitar players. That's right. They're not great guitar players, but they play the guitar in such a unique way that it makes them special,
Yeah, they really don't play guitar right.
They don't.
They don't play like they...
They don't
play like they had guitar lessons. They play like they just figured it out on their own.
They don't have chops. They're
Well, that's the thing, but they do. Because, if you try to play their stuff, it's hard. It's hard because it's not right. They're not doing kind of guitar patterns that you expect to find on the guitar. And it's so much of just, I think them just exploring the guitar and trying to find interesting chords and dissonances. And, there's definitely, I've learned a lot from their guitar playing, and I call it Fugazi chords whenever I, just make up something, where I'm just if I plug it into the chord analyzer and it's warning, I get the little triangle with the exclamation point that's this isn't a real chord.
That is kind of how they play.
Missing important information to really define this chord, and it's here's 9 different things that you could call it, and it's all these flat 6/9, just all
Sustained.
bizarre kind of jazz chord sort of like terminology. But it's like, but yeah, there's still something missing. It's like that's not, and that's kind of what Fugazi. I think what Brandon or what Guy and Ian are doing, where they're just like, yeah, sort of know like a power chord, but they'll kind of start with a power chord or an octave or whatever, and I think then they just like move their fingers around until they find something weird, and then just go with that.
I was trying to look it up. Did Ian play guitar in any bands before Fugazi? He didn't play in Embrace. I mean, maybe he did in like Egg Hunt or Skewbald, one of those bands. But I don't think he didn't play guitar in Minor Threat. He didn't play guitar in Embrace. And those were like the notable big releases. So it's like he's like learned how to play guitar. He
was the guitarist in Egg Hunt.
Okay.
So that's 2 songs though.
Yeah, it's 2 songs. Yeah. And Grand Union, they were 2-piece too. So that was another one that was like, he probably played guitar in that one too. Guy did play guitar in Right to Spring. But he also had Eddie Janney, who was Eddie Janney in Embrace too? I was just looking at.
No. There's no Janneys in Embrace. That was Ivor Hansen, Michael Hampton, Chris Bald.
Edward Janney, guitar on track B5
Okay.
on the LP. So he just played guitar on one song.
Eddie was in Faith.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, Ian didn't really have much guitar. And it's funny that he was like, I'm going to play guitar in this band. This 3-piece. Like, yeah, Ian, you don't know how to play guitar.
And Ian probably does play the most straight ahead stuff.
Yeah.
He does play typically like the riffier, kind of more straightforward hardcore riffs.
I think Guy's the one who's doing all those like weird, like flourishy, noisy, buzzy bits. It's just like, yeah, those feel like Guy's parts. I mean, stuff that really stands out to me on this record. My favorite songs on the record are Nice New Outfit. I love that song. Latin Roots is really fun. I like that one a lot. Runaway Return, I really, really enjoyed. Polish, I like a lot. Actually, I kind of think the back half is stronger than the front half of this album.
Yeah, I would agree.
I think Long Division through KYO, I think that's like the best run on the album. Now, I think Nice New Outfit's like probably the best song on the whole record, but Exiling and Reclamation are both really fun, but yeah, just looking at it, because you have a dividing line too with the Steady Diet instrumental track in the middle of the record. There is like a divider, and I think I like the back half better. It's funny. I tend to enjoy the stuff that's harder, like the songs on here that are like more like what you heard on Repeater, but there's nothing on here that I'm like, don't like that. My least favorite song is Steady Diet because it's an instrumental, and it's just an instrumental.
Yeah.
I have nothing against it, but I need vocals.
To me, this record sounds a lot like what I imagine the Minutemen might have been doing if they had made it to the 90s.
I was going to ask if that democratic thing was a Minutemen thing that they were trying to kind of emulate, because I think those Minutemen records are... I feel like you can mix those more democratically, because they're only a 3-piece, and Mike is playing like a thin, brittle style of guitar. So I think you can... Yes, D. Yeah, Mike's bass is like...
Well, that was their like version of that was, you're the bass, so you have no treble, and I'm the guitar, and I have no bass. Like mixing kind of philosophy.
They're such weirdos. They did everything the wrong way, but they were so good. And it's easier for a 3-piece to be democratic. I also think I read that like Gang of Four kind of had a little democratic thing going on too, at least early on.
Yeah.
Because they were a little more evenly. Yeah, I guess, being democratic in a band, though, helps your longevity, too.
Yeah, I mean, Fugazi really, once they get that solid 4-piece lineup set, that's it.
Yeah.
There's no change.
I think they bring in some people occasionally to, like, play, like, some extra stuff. Like, not guitar or anything like that, just, like, random weird instruments they would bring in occasionally, but not very often. It probably only when they were in DC, too, Oh, Ivor Hansen came out and played the melodica on this one. Well, let's do the aftermath here. And they would go on to release 4 more studio albums: In on the Kill Taker in 1993, Red Medicine in 1995, End Hits in 1998, and The Argument in 2001, before going on permanent hiatus. And after Fugazi, Brendan Canty played in a number of other bands, but most notably, he is currently in the band The Mesthetics, and he was in the band Fake Names, which was the band with like Brian Baker and Dennis from Refused. I think that band's dead because after Dennis's heart attack in Refused dying, I don't think Fake Names is going to be a thing anymore. And Guy would go on to mostly become a producer. He would do records for Blonde Redhead, The Makeup, Gossip, The Blood Brothers, and Vic Chestnut. He played guitar on 2 Vic Chestnut records. Funnily enough, Guy is on a Now That's What I Call Music because he produced a song by Gossip that got on that comp. Which to me was like, Gossip was on a Now That's What I Call Music? That's weird. But he's the only member of Fugazi to be on a Now That's What I Call Music. Joe Lally goes on to release a number of solo records. Bassist solo records. Fun. He brings all his friends to play too, but it's still a bassist solo record. And he would play in the band Decahedron, which was the post-Frodis band. And he would join Mesthetics with Brendan Canty. And then Ian goes on to play in the Evens with his wife Amy Farina, who played in the Warmers before. And the most recent band is Koriki, which was Amy and Joe Lally. So it's like a hybrid of Fugazi and the Evens. And yeah, Fugazi, it's a permanent hiatus in the sense that they still liked each other. They still get along.
They have supposedly played music together.
Yeah, they have. Yeah. And they've done records where they like play with each other. You know, like those Joe Lally records, like Guy's on those, you know. They just play together. They always called it a hiatus, I guess, because they always wanted to leave they never wanted to say no forever. But at this point, it's been talked to death, but at this point, I don't think Fugazi can come back. Because knowing them, they would still want to keep it like at cheap prices for tickets. And like their stuff, you know, as soon as it sold out, you know, bots bought half those tickets. And then, you know, they'd be scalping those things for like hundreds of dollars. I don't think there's a way for Fugazi to come back in a pre-announced, pre-planned, you know, way. The only way they can do it is like a surprise special reunion. That's the only way I think it can work.
And they wouldn't do it just to be sentimental. Which, it's interesting because I feel like, do you feel like Ian keeping the house and like having all that stuff in it and, you know, the archives and working through all the Discord reissues and all the Fugazi live archives and all of that stuff, that seems like something that is sentimental, but I wonder if it's not. Like, I wonder if it's just documentary.
I think you're right. I think that's what it is, because he is all about documenting things. Because how many times has he put out something that never came out in the 80s, but it was recorded, and he was just like, well, I want to put it out anyway. The band is dead and has been dead for a long time, but people need to hear these, you know. Like that One Last Wish record came out in the 90s, like mid-90s, but it was recorded in 1986. So he does care about archiving and keeping the history alive. And he's kind of like an unofficial tour guide too, because like they say if you just show up and he's there, he'll be like, you want to come in? You want to look around? Like just a people. He's never met them before. They're not famous. It's just like people showing up. And he's like, you want to come look around? He's just like a museum guide for the Discord house. Yeah. So this is a Faith Void Split test pressing that, you know, I feel like that's what he is. I think he just likes his old stuff. And yeah, I don't think it's nostalgia. I think you're right. I think it's like, it belongs in a museum approach to, and Discord is a bit, I mean, they don't put out a ton of new music anymore. And when they do, it's usually like regional artists and bands from bands that were on the label a long time ago.
Yeah.
We're entering the phase now where we're getting like new bands from members of 2000s Discord bands. Like, there's some new band on Discord now, and it's like members of Antelope. I'm like, Antelope?
But that's the thing too, like, where it's like, there's so little money in that.
Yeah.
You know, there's, not to say that Discord doesn't make money. Discord does make money.
They make a shit ton of money, as we just discussed.
A lot of money.
And I bet they still make money on those Fugazi reissues.
And they do, yeah. But, like, what if I go to Discord now and I want to buy a Fugazi record? Say I want to buy Steady Diet of Nothing. I can buy the CD for $10, the LP for $18, and digital for $7. And they keep it in print.
Yeah. Most of their stuff they keep in print, I think.
And LPs now are like $25.
Baseline.
So they're still keeping things cheap. Like, the prices have certainly gone up over the years because they have to.
Yeah, it's probably manufacturing is really the only reason they raise those prices.
From cost perspective, they have to. But, like, I can get anything that they have for cheap still.
Yeah. That also keeps down the secondary market, too. Like, constantly having stuff in print keeps the secondary. Now, like, first presses of stuff probably still sell for good chunks of change, but that's pure record nerd shit. That is purely, like, I gotta have a first pressing of End Hits, you know. But the casual record collector, or the one who's just like, I'm a fan of this band, I can get all their records still on vinyl, means that guy doesn't have to pay quadruple the amount that it would have cost, because they just want, like, well, it's out of print, and I gotta buy this, like, third pressing for, like, $35 to get it, you know?
There's such a commitment to their ethics, and they have maintained it forever. And it's always the thing, like, when you try to talk about ethics in punk and music or whatever, and, like, people, and you point to, like, Fugazi, and you point, you know, and people want to always say, like, well, you're not Fugazi. And it's like, no, I'm not Fugazi, but you're not a fucking rock star either. So, like, what can we find in the middle? And can you, like, make really good music your priority and not be a piece of shit? You know, just, like, actually have some dignity and some respect for yourselves and for each other in this industry, and try to just, like, not make as much money as possible.
And there's so many, like, people that kind of followed the Discord model that are still doing it today. You know, like, Mike Park runs Asian Man Records out of his parents' garage still to this day.
Yeah.
And it's all handshake agreements, no contracts outside of, like, we'll do this many and I'll give you this many copies, that kind of stuff. Like, he doesn't sign bands, really. He says he signs bands, but it's really just like I signed you to do this record. Yeah. And if I want to do the next one, you're still signed.
I sign you. It's almost like the door's open. It's like, oh, I'm signing this band, or it's more like they just, like, hey, if you got something you want me to put out,
yeah,
and I have the time to put it out, I'll do it.
And he does put stuff out very similar to the way that Discord does, where it's just like, I know these people and they want to put out a record on my label. Okay, I like them. But even, like, Merge, like, I think Merge is, like, maybe the more commercial version of what Discord is. But even then,
for most of its history, it was handshake agreement.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, we split everything down the middle.
Yeah. And there's probably dozens of other labels that you could think of where they have that. They're very inspired by Discord, so every label that's just like, yeah, I maxed out all my credit cards to put out records, like, those are in the school of Discord, you know? They did it themselves. They wanted to put something out, and nobody else was.
It's not to say there aren't, you know, bad accountants and
Jello.
No idea.
No, yeah, that was the other one I was thinking. Like, they even have a house.
and or even just deliberately, malicious, like, tiny engines. That was like a case of someone who's being deliberately skimming money, and somebody else just being a bad accountant.
Yeah,
that was like a double whammy. You know, that's KYEO. You know.
Yeah. Well, did we win?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I mean, agreed. Yeah. It's funny that I chose this record, but it's your favorite Fugazi record. That is very funny.
Yeah.
This is like the Gaslight Anthem all over again. Yeah, we definitely won. I'm going to give it a 4. 4. Do I want to just stick with 4? Either 4.25. That's what I'll sit with. 4.25 is where I'm at.
I'm still 5 stars. It's still my favorite favorite Fugazi record.
It's my favorite.
Yeah, I don't know. Every time I don't reach for Fugazi a whole lot these days, but I do think maybe I should a little more often because I listen to this record and it like fires me up. I listen to those classic Fugazi records and I'm like, man, this is just what I want to be doing. There'll never be another Fugazi. It's probably not possible.
Yeah, I don't know.
But
I don't know if we'll ever get one.
I think that everyone should strive to be like Fugazi.
Yeah.
To be that creative, dynamic, and fair. I don't know. I think the lessons to learn from Fugazi are still relevant. I mean, the political lyrics of this record.
Yeah.
That mirror now. And those were the good days.
They were warning about Roe v. Wade being taken away because of the the conservative judges being appointed by Reagan and Bush in the 90s. And they were right to be worried about it because that shit fucking happened. Yeah. They were right. They could see far enough in the future, like, oh yeah, this is how it will happen. It will go down this way. So, yeah, we gotta be more like Fugazi. All right, well, that will do it for us. So thank you all so much for listening. We appreciate you all. You can follow us on all forms of social media at punklautopod, punklautopod@gmail.com, and our voicemail line 202-688-PUNK. Where can we follow you, Dylan?
You can follow me at Major Awards Band and Husker Dylan, most places. If you want, go follow me on Blue Sky and answer my question, what kind of apps do you think are on Ian Mackay's phone?
When you so I saw that, and your response was you said he has the Stocks app, and I was like, because it was auto.
I meant stock apps. It probably auto corrected? Just like what comes on your phone.
I was gonna say, like, do you mean that because he does the stocks, or because that's just what's on your phone when you start it up?
It's just he just has just all the apps that come preloaded on your phone, and
Yeah.
and no phone numbers, no contacts. He just manually dials every number.
He still has memorized every phone number he needs to call on a regular basis. Or he has a phone book. He has like a little personal contacts book with phone numbers handwritten down in it. That's what he's got. And he sits down for his weekly call with Henry every Sunday.
Sure he does that on the landline.
Yeah, the house line. And it's got the curly Q, like the phone is to the actual bottom base of the phone.
It's the phone that there's a picture of him in the Discord house, like talking on the phone. Like it's that phone.
He never replaced it. It still works.
It's the same Bell Atlantic
tan phone. Yeah, beige.
Guaranteed.
Yeah.
No wireless phone in the Discord house.
No, not at all. Because the battery just dies.
Yeah. They got one once in the 90s and the batteries died.
Because I forgot to hang it up. I left it on a bookshelf in the nook where I was eating breakfast. We've made him like more into a Luddite than I think he actually is.
Yeah.
He's not John K. Sampson where you got to mail him a postcard to get a response from him.
They posted this on the bulletin board at the library.
Yeah. All right, well, that'll do it for us. So thank you all so much for listening, and we will talk to you next time.
To order Punk, call the number on your screen. Rush delivery is available. Remember, this special offer is not sold in stores.